Welcome to the CareClinic Pod. I'm Emma, and this is Jones.
Ever been just hanging out, having a good time, and then suddenly your heart starts racing.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And this wave of terror just washes over you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're convinced you're having a heart attack.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thing about panic attacks, right?
Right.
They can feel so intense physically
Yeah.
that many people, they think it's an emergency.
Exactly. And that's why we were talking about this today. We're going to try to untangle the whole mystery of anxiety and panic attacks. Help you understand, the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Give you some tools to help you manage both.
And don't forget,
Right.
the CareClinic app is an amazing resource for folks looking for support. You can track your symptoms,
Oh, yeah.
access guided meditations, and even connect with therapists right on your phone.
It's like a mental health toolkit you carry around.
Exactly.
All right, so let's start by going over some of the basics. We all experience anxiety from time to time.
Right.
It's a natural human response to stress.
It's like your internal alarm system letting you know there could be a threat.
Oh,
Like that, fluttery feeling you get in your stomach before you have to give a presentation, or
yeah,
the restlessness you feel before a first date.
totally.
It's your body saying, hey, pay attention.
Right, and in those situations, like a little anxiety is good, right?
Right?
It keeps us alert and motivated.
Exactly. It's what helped our ancestors avoid danger and survive.
Oh, wow.
But here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Anxiety becomes a problem when it's excessive persistent
Yeah,
and starts to interfere with your daily life.
like your alarm system is going off 24/7, even when there's no danger.
Exactly.
That could be really draining.
Absolutely. That's when we start talking about anxiety disorders, which are the most common mental illness in the U.S.
Wow, I didn't know it was that prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it really highlights the importance of understanding this stuff and seeking help when it's needed.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to make the distinction between anxiety, which is that general worry, and panic attacks, which are sudden, intense surges of fear that just feel completely overwhelming.
Like the difference between a drizzle and a thunderstorm,
That's a great analogy.
right?
And to help you even differentiate further, let's talk about the specific symptoms of a panic attack. We're talking a racing heart, chest pain, dizziness, shortness of breath, trembling chills,
Oh, wow.
and even a feeling of being detached from reality, which is called derealization.
Derealization. That sounds terrifying. What does that feel like?
It's a sense of disconnection from everything around you, like the world isn't real.
Oh, wow.
Some people describe it as feeling like they're in a dream or watching themselves outside their body.
That must be really unsettling.
Yeah,
And these panic attack symptoms, they hit so suddenly and intensely. It's no wonder people think they're having a heart attack or another medical emergency.
exactly. And while we don't know exactly what causes panic attacks,
Yeah.
it seems to be a combination of things. Genetics, brain chemistry, and life experiences can all play a role.
And we saw that having a family history of anxiety, experiencing stressful life events, or even dealing with other mental health conditions like depression can increase the risk.
Right.
It's often a complex picture.
It is, and that's why it's so important to approach anxiety and panic disorders holistically, considering all the potential factors.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, some of this sounds familiar,
Yeah.
don't panic.
Right.
The good news is that both anxiety and panic disorders are very treatable.
Absolutely. There are many effective approaches, from therapy and medication to lifestyle changes and practical coping mechanisms.
And remember, the CareClinic app can be so helpful for you throughout this journey. You can track your symptoms, access guided meditations, and even find therapists near you.
It's like having a pocket-sized support system.
Now let's dive a little deeper into one of the most effective therapeutic approaches, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Okay.
CBT is really powerful because it helps you identify and change those negative thought patterns that can fuel anxiety and panic. And it also gives you coping mechanisms for stressful situations, which helps you feel more in control.
Absolutely.
So it's not just talking about your feelings. It's about learning practical skills to manage your thoughts and behaviors.
Exactly. For example, one CBT technique is cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
This involves identifying and challenging distorted or unhelpful thoughts that contribute to your anxiety.
So instead of thinking, I'm going to fail this presentation and everyone will judge me,
Right.
you might learn to reframe that as, I've prepared well, and even if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Precisely. And another CBT technique is exposure therapy.
Okay.
This is particularly helpful for phobias and panic disorder.
So if you're terrified of spiders,
Yeah,
you might gradually expose yourself to spider images,
you're right.
videos, and eventually even real spiders in a safe and controlled environment.
Exactly. The idea is to gradually desensitize yourself to the fear. And while it can be challenging,
Yeah.
it's incredibly effective in reducing anxiety and fear.
It's like facing your fears head on, proving to yourself that you're stronger than you think. And in addition to therapy, medication can also play a role in managing anxiety and panic.
Yes, medications like antidepressants, particularly SSRIs,
Okay.
can help regulate brain chemistry and reduce anxiety symptoms.
And there are also anti-anxiety medications like benzodiazepines, which can be really helpful for short-term relief of anxiety.
It's important to remember that medications should always be used under the guidance of a healthcare professional.
Mm.
They can help you figure out the best options and dosages for your needs.
And remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed by anxiety or panic,
Yeah,
don't wait to reach out for professional help. You don't have to go through this alone.
absolutely. There is a ton of support out there. And taking that first step is a sign of strength, not weakness.
I love that.
Before we move on, I think it's important to take a moment to talk about the different ways anxiety can show up in our lives.
That's a good point, because I think a lot of people, they just assume that anxiety is just constant worrying, but it can manifest in so many other ways.
Absolutely. Anxiety is essentially a feeling of unease, worry, or fear. It's your body's natural response to stress.
Right.
But when this response goes into overdrive, it can lead to a variety of anxiety disorders.
And each of these disorders has like its own unique set of symptoms and challenges.
Right. Let's start with one that a lot of people can probably relate to, generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD.
Okay.
People with GAD experience excessive worry and anxiety often about everyday things like work, health, finances, relationships.
Yeah.
It's like their worry switch is stuck in the on position.
So even small things can feel really overwhelming and just trigger so many anxious thoughts.
Absolutely. Their worries are often totally out of proportion to the situation,
Right.
and they really struggle to control these thoughts. This can lead to physical symptoms like fatigue, muscle tension, difficulty sleeping, even digestive issues.
Wow. It's amazing how much anxiety can impact our physical health as well as our mental state.
Now, imagine you're invited to a party or a networking event or even just dinner with friends, and instead of feeling excited, you're completely overwhelmed with fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
That's what it's like for people with social anxiety disorder.
Social situations are hard for everybody, but for people with social anxiety, it's like facing a minefield.
Right.
They're so worried about being judged, embarrassed, or rejected by others,
Exactly.
which can lead them to avoid these situations altogether, and that can impact their work and personal lives.
You're right. It can be debilitating. They might avoid social gatherings altogether, have trouble speaking up in meetings, or even making eye contact.
Yeah, it's like this fear of being judged becomes a barrier to them connecting with others and living a full life.
Now let's talk about phobias.
Okay.
These are intense, irrational fears of very specific objects or situations like spiders' heights or flying.
Yeah, we always hear people say, oh, I'm so afraid of spiders, but a phobia, it's so much more than a dislike.
Right.
It's a real visceral fear that can even trigger a panic attack.
Precisely. It's like their body's fight or flight response gets activated by something that wouldn't bother most people.
Right.
And this fear can be disruptive to their lives.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being terrified of flying and having to turn down a dream job because it requires travel, or missing out on a vacation with your family.
Exactly. Phobias can be limiting, but like other anxiety disorders, they are treatable with therapies like exposure therapy.
Oh, yeah. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
By gradually exposing yourself to the thing you're afraid of,
Right.
you can learn to manage it and hopefully overcome it.
Exactly.
Now, we've mentioned panic attacks a lot in this episode,
Yeah,
but I think we should really highlight panic disorder as its own separate condition.
absolutely. While panic attacks can happen with other anxiety disorders, panic disorder is characterized by these recurring unexpected panic attacks.
So it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing cycle of fear.
Exactly. And what makes it even harder is that people with panic disorder, they often develop a fear of the panic attacks themselves.
Oh, wow. So it's like a double whammy.
Right.
The fear of the attack triggers more attacks.
Exactly. They might start avoiding situations where they think they might have a panic attack,
Right.
which can limit what they can do.
It's sad to think about people trapped in their homes because of this fear,
Yeah,
but there's hope.
absolutely.
There are effective treatments available.
Therapies like CBT, along with medication and lifestyle changes, can help people with panic disorder manage their symptoms and get their lives back.
Now let's move on to a couple other anxiety disorders that I think are sometimes overlooked.
Okay.
Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD,
Ah,
and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
great point. OCD is characterized by these intrusive, unwanted thoughts, images, or urges, obsessions that trigger really intense anxiety. And to try to manage this anxiety, people engage in these repetitive, behaviors or mental X compulsions.
So like a constant battle in their minds.
Right.
The obsessions fuel the compulsions.
Exactly. For example, someone with OCD might have an obsession with germs and constantly wash their hands.
And PTSD, which can happen after someone experiences or witnesses a traumatic event, often involves intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, and just a heightened sense of danger.
Yes, it's like their mind and body are constantly on high alert.
Yeah.
Reliving the trauma, they might avoid anything that reminds them of the event. They might feel emotionally numb and have trouble sleeping and concentrating.
It's important to remember that PTSD isn't a weakness. It's a normal response to something really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And like other anxiety disorders, PTSD is treatable therapies like trauma-focused CBT and EMDR have been really effective in helping people process their trauma and manage their symptoms.
It's great to know that even after going through something so traumatic, healing is possible.
Absolutely. And remember, if you're listening to this and you feel like you might have one of these anxiety disorders, you're not alone. Millions of people experience this, and there is help available.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed and not sure where to turn, the CareClinic app can be a good starting point.
Yeah.
You can track your symptoms, access resources, and connect with mental health professionals in your area.
It's like having a virtual companion to guide you through the process of seeking help.
Wow, we have really covered a lot today.
Yeah,
From the basics of anxiety and panic attacks to all the different anxiety disorders.
Right.
It's a lot to take in.
It is understanding anxiety in all its different forms. That's a journey.
Yeah.
But I think now we have a better understanding of what we're dealing with.
Right.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about what we can actually do about it.
Okay, let's talk about strategies for managing anxiety in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
What are some things we can do?
Well, one of the most powerful and accessible tools is your breath.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those deep breathing exercises we talked about?
Yeah.
They're not just some trendy relaxation technique. They're actually backed by science.
It's amazing how such a simple thing can have such a big impact on our bodies and minds.
It really is.
Can you remind us how to do them properly?
Sure. Find a comfortable position. You can close your eyes if you want and take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, filling your belly with air like you're filling a balloon.
Yeah.
Hold it for a second or two and then slowly exhale through your mouth, feeling all the tension release from your body.
It's like you hit the pause button on all those thoughts and feelings of overwhelm.
Exactly.
And the best part is you can do it anywhere.
Right.
Feeling anxious in a meeting, deep breaths, stressed about a deadline, deep breaths,
Totally.
overwhelmed with your to-do list, deep breaths.
It's a portable anxiety buster.
I love that. And speaking of portable tools, let's talk about mindfulness again.
Okay.
We mentioned it earlier, but I think it's important to emphasize how much it can help with anxiety.
It really can.
But mindfulness is all about being present without judgment.
Right.
So how does that help with anxiety?
Well, anxiety is often about dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Yeah.
Mindfulness helps us get out of that cycle by gently bringing our attention back to the present.
It's like training a puppy. When those anxious thoughts come sniffing around,
Yeah.
we gently redirect our attention back to what's happening right here, right now.
That's a great analogy. And there are lots of ways to practice mindfulness. You can try guided meditations, use mindfulness apps, or just focus on your breath, your body, or what you see and hear around you.
It's so cool that we have this ability to calm our minds and be present.
It is.
And speaking of things that make us feel good, let's not forget about exercise.
Oh, yes. Exercise isn't just for our physical health. It's a really powerful tool for managing anxiety.
I know that when we exercise, our body releases endorphins, those feel-good chemicals.
Right.
But how does it actually help with anxiety?
So those endorphins, they act like natural painkillers and mood boosters.
Okay.
Exercise also helps to regulate our stress response system, so we're less reactive to things that stress us out.
So it's like we give our body a chance to let go of tension and reset.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be intense exercise. Even moderate exercise like brisk walking, yoga, or dancing can make a difference.
Right. It's about finding something you enjoy and can actually stick with.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about another really important thing, sleep.
Sleep, the foundation of well-being.
Yeah.
When we don't get enough sleep, our body's stress response system goes into overdrive, making us more vulnerable to anxiety and mood swings.
It's like trying to function with an empty gas tank.
Exactly.
You're going to feel irritable, sluggish, and easily overwhelmed.
So make sure you're prioritizing good sleep hygiene, have a regular sleep schedule, create a relaxing bedtime routine, and make sure your bedroom is cool, dark, and quiet.
And if you're having trouble sleeping, definitely talk to your doctor. There might be other things going on.
Good point.
Okay, so we talked about taking care of our minds and bodies, but what about what we put into our bodies?
Yeah, food plays a big role in how we feel.
Right.
A balanced diet full of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean protein gives our brain and body the nutrients they need to function well.
So it's about more than just calories. It's about nourishing ourselves.
Exactly.
What are some foods we should try to avoid if we're prone to anxiety?
Processed foods, sugary drinks, and too much caffeine can actually make anxiety worse.
Oh,
They cause our blood sugar levels to spike and crash, which can make our mood all over the place.
it's like you're on an energy roller coaster.
Exactly. And don't forget about staying hydrated. Dehydration can actually feel like anxiety, so make sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day.
Now, in addition to all these lifestyle changes,
Yeah,
it's also super important to address those negative thought patterns that fuel anxiety.
absolutely. It's like our mind can be our own worst enemy,
Yeah.
trapping us in a cycle of worry.
So how do we break free?
One thing that can help is to write down your anxious thoughts and then challenge them.
Okay.
Ask yourself, is this thought really true? What evidence do I have to support this thought? Is there a more balanced or realistic way of looking at this?
So like we put those thoughts on trial.
Exactly.
Let's see if they hold up.
And sometimes just acknowledging them and calling them out as anxiety that can be helpful.
Right, like you're separating yourself from them
Exactly. Recognizing that they're just thoughts, not facts.
and they don't control us.
Right.
Okay. And finally, let's not forget about self-care.
Oh, yes. Self-care.
It's so important. Make time for activities that bring you joy and help you relax. Whether it's reading a book, spending time with people you love, or taking a long bath.
Right. Find what works for you.
And don't underestimate the power of connection.
Yeah.
Reach out to your friends, family, or maybe a support group. Talking about what you're going through can help you feel less alone.
Absolutely. Sharing our burdens can make them feel lighter.
And speaking of support, let's not forget about the CareClinic app.
It really is a great resource.
It can help you through this whole journey.
Right?
You can track your symptoms, do guided meditations, connect with mental health professionals, and find a ton of info and support.
It's like having a little helper right in your pocket.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a sense of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a common human experience, but it doesn't have to control your life.
By understanding anxiety, developing coping skills, and seeking support when you need it, you can get your peace of mind back and live a fulfilling life.
You are not alone on this journey. Remember, there is help, and recovery is definitely possible. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time on the CareClinic Podcast.